Today on Stock Charts in Focus, we're building off of last week's show, taking that sector summary plus scooters, Stock Charts technical rank concept, to the next level. We're going to put that right on your charts, give you what I think is the ultimate relative strength view right there on your charts. If you liked the show that we did last week, drilling down from the sectors to the industry groups and to the individual stocks within, and then using those scooter scores to actually filter them out and find the strongest stocks possible, we're going to put that right on your charts. You're going to love this week's show. We got a lot to get to. Of course, you know what it is. It's all new. It's all here. It's Stock Charts in Focus. All right, my friends, welcome to the show, Stock Charts in Focus. Of course, our product focus show here on the channel where we dig into the site, dive into the tools, show you around the features, and ultimately help you get more value out of stock charts. That's our mission here every Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time up on the live channel. Also up on our YouTube channel after that and the on-demand platform at StockChartsTV.com. My name is Grayson Roze, Vice President of Operations here at StockCharts.com. As always, wonderful to be with you. I gotta say, especially this week though, I was blown away. You guys truly did blow me away after last week's show. We touched on something that we have talked about in the past, but it's been a long time. Now, I said when we started last week's show, it's one of my favorite topics to show people, one of my favorite tools and features to show people when we talk about getting more value out of stock charts. Last week's show, digging into that sector summary tool, is a great example of it. But you guys blew me away. I really, truly mean that. The response that we got to last week's show blew me away. In the comments and people writing into us and things like that saying, I didn't know this tool exists. Thank you so much for showing it to me. Thank you for showing the way that we put those together, the sector summary and the scooters. It was a great response. And it really got me thinking, with that response, the way that you guys liked that show that we did yesterday, everything that you wrote in about it, I got to take it to the next level. I got to take it to the charts, show you how to actually take that concept of the sector summary, show you how to drill down into those sectors and industries to the individual stocks, combine it with the scooters. I got to show you how to put that on your charts. Now, this is something that I've been doing for a long time, something that also one of our longtime Stock Charts contributors, Roze, my tensile trading co-author and my father, he has been a big proponent of this for a long time. He's been one of the figures on Stock Charts that sort of pushed this concept, this kind of multi-tier sector industry stock relative strength approach. You're going to see it in action today. If what I'm saying right now doesn't really make sense to you, well, you're going to see it all in just a minute. So we are going to have a lot of fun on this show this week. I know I do say that every week, but this one in particular, really building off of what we did last week. So to start, we're going to jump over to that sector summary tool. I do want to give everyone kind of a quick run through, just a little bit of a refresher on kind of how that thing works and what we're going to build into our charts, but then we'll jump over to those charts and we'll get going. Before I do that, I want to remind everyone, if you didn't catch last week's episode, this one is going to be a heck of a lot more powerful if you go back and watch that episode that we did last week. So whether you're on the site, you can look for the playlist there. If you're on YouTube, definitely check out that last one that we did last week. Or if you're on the on-demand platform, you can find it there as well. We will put links in the description below. So if you're watching this on YouTube or on that on-demand platform, check out the description below. We'll put a link to last week's show, but definitely take a look back at that. The highlight that we're going to do right now is going to be very, very quick. So if you want the full details, check out last week's show. Anyways, that's my open. Let's jump over to the site and get going. So we're doing a quick run through of last week's show here in about a minute. Now we're going to breeze through this again. If you want the full details, definitely go back and revisit last week's show. Here on the charts and tools page, though, a great directory of everything that is on Stock Charts. As you scroll down this page, you do have a link over here on the right to the sector summary. But under that summary pages group, you can find that sector summary card. Give that a click. That's going to take you over to our sector summary tool. Now, the high level, this page is obviously used to summarize the sectors, but the great thing that it includes is a very unique drill down function. The way that the markets are organized and sort of the organization that StockCharts has adopted is sector, industry, individual stock. We use the S&P sectors. We use the Dow Jones industry groups. We just like that big list of industry groups and the way that they fit with the sectors. And then we've got all of the individual stocks within. So what's very, very cool about this sector summary page is that you can start here at that sector level. You got those 11 S&P sectors. You can actually choose your period. So look back over the last, for instance, 1 month, see what the top sectors are. You can then drill down into any of these sectors by clicking on the name. So when you click on the name, you can see that we are now looking at all of the industry groups within the materials sector. This is over the last 1 month. We can see that the biggest winner has been steel. So we can then click down from that industry group level into the individual stock level. Now we're looking at all of the individual steel stocks within that industry group. We can use this tool, as you saw last week, to find the strongest industry, the strongest sector, the strongest industry group, and the strongest stocks within. Now, once we get to this individual stock level, we can sort by scooter. We can actually keep those groups together by sort of double clicking here. We can sort by scooter, give that scooter column a click, and then sort by universe. That's going to keep all of the stocks in the same scooter universe together. So now we're looking from top to bottom at the strongest sector, strongest industry group, and then we're filtering by scooter. We're sorting by scooter, and we're using that as a filter to kind of narrow down the list. Especially when those lists get long, the scooter can be very, very helpful. So this is an incredibly powerful feature. And again, it's all based around this concept of starting at that sector level, drilling down into the industry groups, and then drilling down into the individual stocks within. When you use this tool the way that we showed last week, again, you can use that to find some of the strongest stocks in the market because you have strength, not just at that individual stock level, but really at all three levels, going from the bottom up and the top down. No matter how you want to spin it, you've got a strong sector, you've got a strong industry group, you've got a strong stock within. That is a lot of strength. So we showed this on last week's show. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take this concept, this same exact idea, and we're going to build it into your charts. So, without further ado, let's jump over to the StockCharts workbench now. We'll start there, and then at the end of the show, we'll actually jump over to ACP, show you how these charts look over there as well. All right, so we are on the StockCharts workbench now. If you're a StockCharts user, this is going to be very familiar to you. When I say StockCharts workbench, I mean the page that you use to view and edit and create your StockCharts. The page that has all of these settings down below the chart, that's what we call the workbench. Now, I am going to cheat a little bit on this show, and I am going to start with our end result. Instead of building everything up from scratch and kind of taking time to create everything from the very first step, we're actually going to start with the final product so that you can kind of see what we're building towards. We'll review this chart really quickly, and then we'll take a look at the settings, show you exactly how to create this. Now, you're probably going to have this question, so I'll answer it right now. We are also going to have a link to this chart in the description below. We'll do the same thing for ACP as well. So if you're watching this again on YouTube or on that on-demand platform, definitely take a look at the description down below. You'll get links to not only last week's episode, but also this chart. You can actually put it directly into your own account, start using it. Or if you're using ACP, you'll get a link to that chart as well. So again, remember what we're doing. We're finding strong stocks, not just at the individual stock level, but stocks that are in strong industry groups and stocks that are in strong sectors that are in strong industry groups. So we call that relative strength. Now, when you build all that up, when you sort of flow through those levels of the sector summary page, the way that I like to say it is that you're putting together kind of relative strength at multiple tiers. It's not just one tier of relative strength. It's not just this stock is outperforming the market. It's this stock is outperforming the market. It's in an industry group that's outperforming its sector and that's outperforming the market. And it's in a sector that's outperforming the market. When you sort of line up that relative strength at every level, just like we did with last week's show by drilling down through those strong sectors, industry groups, and stocks, you're putting together kind of multi-tier relative strength. Now, when you layer in the scooter on top of that, you're adding another level of relative strength, finding the ones that are really, really strong and kind of using that as a filter. So That is what we have on this chart. Now we're going to show you all the settings here in just a second, but I want to walk you through the panels that we have at the very top. So we've showed this off actually a little bit in the past. This is a chart directly out of my account. We've talked about kind of my chart leveling system where I gradually add in more and more indicators. This is what I call my level 4 chart. This is kind of the big daddy in my account. But as you can see, I've got these panels above price. That is how important this is to me. I've got these 3 relative strength panels above price. What these do, I've actually got a feature turned on here on the workbench. I'll show you how to do this in just a second. I've got a feature turned on called the verbose legend. So you can actually read exactly what these are doing. In this case, we're looking at one of those materials and steel stocks called CMC, commercial metals. In the first panel, we're looking at commercial metals, the symbol of this chart, CMC, versus VTI. That is the Vanguard Total Stock Market Index. So that's looking at how is this stock doing relative to the total market? We want to be in things, if we're long, we want to be in things that are outperforming the total market. So in this case, we're looking at how CMC, the individual stock, is doing relative to the total market. That's kind of the first tier of relative strength, right? We want things that are working. If you want to outperform the market, you got to own things that are outperforming the market. So that's what this panel does. If this relative strength line is going up, that means that this symbol is outperforming the market. If it's going down, that means we're underperforming the market. We'll show you exactly how to set this up in just a second. At the next tier down, we have the sector. So just like we did with that sector summary page, we went from sector to industry to individual stock. Here, we're looking for, at the sort of next tier down, we're looking for a strong sector, right? We want to know, hey, this individual stock is outperforming the market, but how is its sector doing? Well, with this panel, what we can see, we have the materials sector versus the total market. So again, if this line is going up, then we know that the sector that this stock is in is outperforming the market. When this starts to go down, that means that that sector is underperforming the market. So again, if we're going to kind of line up that relative strength across those different tiers, we want to be in things that are outperforming the market, and we want to be in things that are in a sector that's outperforming the market. So that's our kind of second tier of relative strength. At the third tier down, we have the industry group. Now again, just like we did on that sector summary page, we went from the sector level down to the industry group level, and we tried to pick the strongest industry groups. So here on this chart, we've got the industry group that this stock belongs to, in this case, the steel index, the steel industry group, versus the sector, versus the material sector. Again, same concept. If this line is going up, then we know we are in a strong industry group. Now, broadly speaking, all 3 of these lines are going up. So let's kind of interpret that. What we have is a stock that's outperforming the market. That's our first tier. We have a stock that's in a sector that's outperforming the market. That's your second tier. And finally, we have a stock that's in an industry group that's outperforming its sector. And that sector is in turn outperforming the market. So when you see all 3 of these lines going up, that's relative strength. That's sort of 3 tiers. That is a beautiful, beautiful thing. That's what I consider the ultimate view of relative strength. Now, this is really the sector summary built into a chart. You can see that kind of sector summary progression right here on your charts. So again, we're going to show you how to set this up in just a second. Now, I've got those sitting above my price panel, and down at the bottom of this chart, I also have the scooter. So just like we did on last week's episode, our final filter was the scooter score, the StockCharts technical rank. Quick overview of how the scooter works. We take the exact same technical criteria, originally based kind of on John Murphy's approach to the market. We apply that technical criteria to all of the stocks within a specific group. So for US stocks, for instance, we have large caps, mid caps, and small caps. We take all of the large caps, stocks over 10 billion in market cap. We apply that same technical criteria and we rank all of them from 0 to 100. Things down at 0 are very, very weak. Things up at 99.9 are incredibly strong. Things kind of floating around in the middle are just generally sort of neutral. So you can use this to think about kind of relative strength within a group. How is CMC doing relative to its peers? Not necessarily relative to the market, but relative to its peers in its sort of market cap group. So this is our final filter that we used on the sector summary page. The beautiful, very, very cool thing about the scooter is that it is also an indicator that you can actually put on your charts. You can chart that line over time. So that's exactly what we've done on this chart. Again, this is kind of my fourth tier, my level 4 chart here that I use. I've got the scooter down here at the bottom, and I can actually see how that scooter line has moved over time. So we can see, for instance, here with CMC, this is an incredibly strong scooter. Last week, I talked about kind of my levels that I like to follow. Personally, I like to find things that are in the 70s and the 80s. It means that they're not totally stretched up there at the high 90s. Things can sit in the 90s for a long time, but I just find a little bit kind of better level at the sort of 70s to 80s. That's what feels good to me. There's still a little bit more room to run for some of those names. That's what I've found. So I've actually put a line across this chart right at 80. That's what that green horizontal line is. So anything above 80 is good to go in my book. That is a very, very strong scooter score. That means it's basically in the top 20th percentile of peers sort of in its group. So we can actually see that over time. We can see that CMC has been above that 80 level for quite some time, really sitting right now at about 89, but it's been kind of bouncing around in the high 80s. That's a great thing. A lot of strength out of CMC. Now, of course, price is most important. So if we look at the price panel, we can see that this stock has been in a beautiful uptrend, consolidated here for a little bit within that uptrend, made a nice breakout. It has continued to run. We get the moving averages pointing in the right direction. This is a beautiful chart. But it's backed up not just by great price action, but by great relative strength at multiple tiers and by a strong scooter score. So everything that we looked at on that sector summary page last week is actually right here on this chart. Now, there are a couple of tricks that we've used to set up this chart. So without further ado, let's finally take a look at how to set this up. Again, we're going to put a link down in the description below so you don't actually have to set this up yourself. You can go click that link, start using this chart as is. We're going to do the same thing with ACP here in just a minute. But this is StockCharts in Focus. We want to make sure that you know exactly how to use the site in every way possible. So let's take a look at some of those settings. Down here at the bottom of the workbench, first up, I mentioned a little feature called the verbose legends. Want to make sure that you know how to turn those on. Up here on the top of this chart, the reason that these are sort of spelled out instead of just being the symbol or short names and things like that, the reason that those are spelled out in full is because I have something called the verbose legends turned on. So that means that my legends on this chart are going to get a little bit more wordy. You actually have some options in there, but right in that menu, look for that legends menu. If you like it to be a little bit more wordy, a little more descriptive, turn on verbose legends. Very, very easy. Just make sure that's selected in the menu. Now, down at the bottom, the meat and potatoes of this chart. What I've done, again, is added those 3 relative strength lines. And the way that I've added those is as price performance indicators using ratio symbols. Let's unpack that a little bit. So here in the indicator section, you can see that I've added 3 indicators that are all price performance indicators. You could add these as standard price indicators. I like to use price performance indicators because it sort of reformats everything in percentage terms. If you use price with a ratio symbol, it's just going to spit out the sort of the mathematical ratio. Some people like that. Some people are totally fine with that. In my case, I actually like to use price performance indicators so that they end up as percentage terms. What I mean by that is when you look up at this chart up at the top, you can see these are actually formatted in a percentage scale. So I know, for instance, that over the last 18 months, the last year and a half, CMC has outperformed the total market by 70.51%. Because this isn't a percentage scale, I can get that reading right away. I can see that its sector has outperformed by 7%. I can see that its industry group has outperformed that sector by 31%. So I like to have things in a percentage scale. Makes it a little easier for me to think about. Also makes it easier to compare across different symbols and sectors and industries, things like that. So I'm using the price performance indicator first and foremost. Now, the most important part of this chart is what's in the parameters box. Again, I said that there's some tips, some tricks, some things that I've done, kind of creative little tricks that I've done to set up this chart. The first one that you need to know about is ratio symbols. So in StockCharts, you can actually compare any two symbols by separating them with a colon. So if you wanted to say, hey, how is Microsoft doing relative to SPY, to the S&P 500? All you've got to do is type in MSFT colon SPY. That's going to take Microsoft and it's going to compare it to SPY. It's going to put those together, spit out a comparison, and chart the relative performance of Microsoft versus SPY. You can do that with any set of symbols around the site. That's what we call a ratio symbol. Now, the key is that you can use those ratio symbols to create relative strength charts. We talk a lot about relative strength. Again, if you want to own things that are outperforming the market, if you want to beat the market, you got to own things that are outperforming the market. So to do that, to add that relative strength view to your charts, you can use ratio symbols. Now, I like to use VTI as my benchmark when I think about the total market. So that's one key. You'll find that in a couple of my ratios. But the little trick that we've done here is added $ symbol, $ sector, and $ industry. Remember those: $ symbol, $ sector, $ industry. What those are going to do is tell Sharp Charts, hey, whatever the symbol on this chart is, pull that into this position, pull that into this ratio. Whatever the sector of the symbol is, pull that into this spot. And whatever the industry group of this symbol is, pull that into this spot. So as you can see, what we have in the top box to compare the stock versus the total market, we have $ symbol colon VTI. That's the symbol that we have on this chart versus the total market, VTI. In the next box down, we have $ sector colon VTI. That's going to take the sector of whatever that symbol is and compare it to the total market. And in the third box down, we have $ industry colon $ sector. That's going to take the industry group of this symbol and compare it to the sector of this symbol. So those little tricks that we've done right here allow us to create that multi-tier relative strength view. Again, we're going to give you the link to this chart so you don't actually have to set this up yourself, but I do want you to know that those little tricks exist. They're here in Sharp Charts. They are also in ACP, so be aware of that. Again, just to review this one more time, what that creates is the symbol of this chart versus VTI, the sector of this chart versus VTI, and the industry group of this chart versus the sector of this chart. Now, the beautiful thing about using those kind of tips or little tricks here in the workbench, those $ symbol, $ sector, and $ industry shortcuts, is that as I surf around the markets and I change this symbol, I mentioned Microsoft, for instance. So let's pull up Microsoft really quick. You can see that when I pull up Microsoft, because I've set this chart up the way that I have with those little shorthand tricks, this is all now changed to reflect Microsoft's composition. So now I have Microsoft versus the total market. I have Microsoft's sector, the technology sector, versus the total market. And I have Microsoft's industry group, the software industry group, versus Microsoft's sector, the technology sector. So I don't have to worry about going in and typing in the right industry group and the right sector in the right box. I don't have to worry about any of that. Because I've used this little $ symbol, $ sector, $ industry trick, this sort of follows along with me. As I surf through the markets, these charts get updated to reflect the symbol that is sort of the root of the chart. So very, very important. Have I said $ symbol, $ sector, $ industry enough? I think I have, but hopefully you're going to leave that, get that stuck in your brain there. So that is how we set up those relative ratios. Now I've positioned those above, I've given those a solid line, and I've set those up with some specific colors to them. So other than that though, pretty standard. I've just put those above that price panel and positioned those in that correct order that I like to see. Again, the stock versus the total market, its sector versus the total market, and its industry group versus its sector. Now you can even take this one level further. I mentioned Gaddis's work. Gaddis actually does take this one level further. He likes to compare a fourth panel, sort of down at the bottom, likes to compare the individual stock versus the industry. So he'll actually have another panel down at the bottom to show the individual stock versus the industry. That brings in sort of yet another tier of relative strength. Personally, I like to stick to 3, but you can decide whatever works for you. If you want to go nuts with this, maybe you want to have panels at the bottom comparing the symbol versus the sector and the symbol versus the industry group. You can really sort of configure this in any way that you can imagine. But that is the top part of this chart, setting those up just like that. Now at the bottom, again, we've got the scooter line. So to set that one up, you come down, you add a scooter line indicator to your charts. Look for that scooter line entry in the indicator menu, select that. No parameters to worry about with that one, and you can position it again anywhere that you want. So if you want to position that above the price panel, you can do that. I position mine below. The only creative thing that I've done with this one, it's pretty straightforward, pretty standard, but the one thing that I have done is added some horizontal lines. So let's take a quick look at that. In this case, I've come over to the overlays area. Now, if this isn't visible for you, just remember you can open up those advanced options. Look for that little green arrow. That's going to open up the advanced options there on the SharpCharts workbench. You can sort of mouse over from left to right here from the scooter line over to that overlays area. I've selected horizontal line here, and I've added in a couple of different options. So I mentioned 70 to 80 is kind of my range that I like to play with. So I've got a green line at 75. You can see I've typed in 75:green and then a comma 25:red. Now I don't necessarily need that red line at 25, but it does kind of round things out visually. And I just like to know, hey, if something that I own is crossing below 25 on the scooter, I'm making some mistakes. I got to get out of this thing. That's kind of how I like to use it. So to add those horizontal lines on your scooter line indicator, you can just look for that horizontal line option there in the overlays menu and add in a couple of parameters to set exactly where you want those horizontal lines to go. Quick tip while I have you, I've also done the same actually with RSI. You can see that on this chart. So in the case of RSI, we've got our bounds typically at 70 and 30. I've actually sort of colored those as green and red for bullish and bearish by adding horizontal lines on the RSI indicator. So a fun little thing. And again, because we're going to give you a link directly to this chart, you'll actually get that as well. So that is how we've set up the ultimate relative strength charts. Hopefully you're going to have some fun playing around with this. Again, you can create this from scratch if you want to sort of go through that exercise, but down in the description below, we are actually going to give you a link to this chart. This is something I've been using for years. Again, I mentioned Gaddis. Gaddis has been using this for years as well. One other way that you can actually get this view is down here on the SharpCharts workbench in the chart styles menu. You can actually scroll down to the very bottom. There is a predefined settings area of this menu. You might not be able to see it here with the screen share, but there's a predefined settings area of this menu, and there's an entry for Gaddis Roze. If you pull up that Gaddis Roze entry, it'll look a little bit like this, and you'll see, just like we sort of created there before, we've got our relative strength views. Here's CMC versus the total market, it's sector versus the total market. We've got the industry group versus the materials sector. And then, like I mentioned, kind of that next tier down, if you really want to add in the full view, we've got CMC, the stock, versus the industry group. So you can see all of those here on the Gaddis Roze view. So with that out of the way, let's jump over to ACP. We'll take a quick look at how this chart looks over there. Again, you can create this in ACP, very, very similar kind of setup. You can do sort of the exact same thing. And one thing is, if you're currently using SharpCharts, but you are interested in jumping over to ACP, exploring what we can do over there, take one of those SharpCharts. If you've created one of these, take one of those charts, save it to a chart list, and you can actually access that from ACP. I'll show you that in just a minute. Again, though, remember, we're going to put those links in the description below to last week's episode, to the Sharp chart, and to the ACP chart. So let's jump over to ACP now and take a look. So for all you ACP users, our advanced charting platform, we are looking at CMC with a very similar setup. Now again, you can do this exact same chart, exact kind of thing here in ACP. It's set up the exact same way using the same indicators. There's one cool thing about this chart that I'll show you in just a second, but really it is exactly the same. You can actually see that over here on the left side of the screen. I've kept the chart settings panel open so we can take a look at all of the settings that are in here. As you can see, I'm using price performance indicators. We're doing the exact same thing. We've got those 3 price performance indicator panels. We're using the exact same kind of idea, $symbol : VTI. That is going to create our stock versus the total market panel. Then we've got our sector versus the total market panel. That's our second one down. $sector : VTI. We're using that again in here. Next up, we have our industry group versus the sector. So here you can see that in full, $industry : $sector. That's going to give you that third tier of relative strength. At the bottom, we have our scooter panel. So we can actually scroll down here. Now, if you're wondering how my ACP charts are scrolling, we've actually got a very cool little clever option here in ACP. You can choose whether you want your charts to be sort of fit to the window, or if you want those to actually be able to kind of scroll off screen. So when I have a tall chart like this in ACP, I actually like to have that be taller, if you will, and sort of scroll off screen. So you can see exactly how that looks right here. At the bottom of this chart, we've got our scooter panel. Now this one looks a little bit different because here in ACP, we do have one clever feature that we have yet to bring to SharpCharts. So if I click into the scooter panel, either from here or actually just by clicking on the chart legend, one really cool thing that you can do in ACP, just give that chart legend a click and that'll pull up the settings for that indicator. You can see we're using the scooter line. We've got $symbol as our parameter in here. That's going to be the default. And you can choose your background style with the scooter indicator in ACP. That is something that we're going to bring to SharpCharts here very soon. But I personally love having that on with this scooter indicator in ACP. If you like it blank, you can change that to be blank. That's going to take away that kind of rainbow shading. But that rainbow shading is actually going to shade that scooter indicator at some of those different levels. So as you can see, 90, 80, 70, I think it is 60, and then all the way down at 20. So you can see those kind of different shading levels. Again, things closer to 0 are going to be kind of in the danger zone. Those are going to be weak charts. Things way up towards 99.9 are going to be incredibly strong. So this shading is just kind of a nice way to kind of see that. Now I've added one thing to this chart, which is a horizontal line at 50, just to kind of have it there. That is the perfect neutral zone. So I've actually done that just by coming here into the scooter settings panel, selecting horizontal line and adding that horizontal line there at 50. One little modification that I have made to this chart, but it's set up exactly the way that sharp chart is. You can see that on here. So a really nice way to look at the markets, to think about the markets, again, kind of complementing that sector summary panel. One other really cool thing to highlight here in ACP, one thing that I am loving using, we'll actually do this here with the fit to window mode turned on so that we can kind of see everything at once. We've built in a new maximize function. So if you're looking at the scooter, you've got your indicators all kind of crammed into the screen here. You're looking at the scooter and you're saying, man, I can't really tell where that is. I got a lot of indicators on this chart. Where exactly is that? Hover over the legend, look for that little full screen icon, and when you give that a click, that's actually going to maximize that one indicator panel to kind of take over the screen, steal all the space from all the other indicators. So if you want to really sort of focus on just one indicator at a time, this is a great way to do it. I'm really enjoying this feature of ACP. Just came out about a month and a half ago, so still pretty new here, but very cool, that new maximize feature. Once you're done, you can just hover over that legend, give that full screen icon a click, and shrink it back down. Now you've got your full chart in view. You can do the same thing with your relative strength line. So if you want to really focus on how is this doing relative to the total market, you want to kind of dig into that relative strength panel, well, you can maximize that one and it goes full view right there in just a click. And again, you can just shrink it right back down. So some cool interactive features here in ACP, and we're always creating more. So again, we're going to put links in the description below. I know I've said that a couple of times, but put links in the description below to last week's show, also to the sharp chart that we created, and to this ACP chart that you're looking at right now. So that is our show for this week. I want to thank you so much for joining me on the show today. Again, it's been a fun 2 weeks now. I was blown away by the reception to last week's show. I'm so glad that you guys enjoyed it. Everyone who reached out and said, hey, this was really, really helpful. I got a lot out of this. Thank you so much. We appreciate that feedback. If you've got ideas or thoughts for us, send those in. Our team is always listening. I'm always listening as well. So always reach out to us. Never hesitate to do that. We love your feedback. We've heard some feedback actually recently on a sector summary tool for Canada, for Canadian sectors and industries. So we're looking into that. The team is looking into that actively. And a little sneak peek, sector summary should be coming to ACP actually down here in the drawer later this year. We're actually going to build this sector summary tool that we've been talking about right into ACP. So some very, very cool things. Don't tell any of the StockCharts people I told you. I wasn't supposed to give the hint away, but I got to let you guys know, right? So anyways, I'm giving away too much. We are always working on something new here at StockCharts, though, so we're going to have more tools, more features, more good stuff coming to the site over the coming couple of months and throughout this year. Big plans for this year. Can't wait to share it all with you guys. Of course, this is going to be the place where we share it. StockCharts in Focus, our weekly show dedicated to the site, dedicated to the tools and features, and helping you get more value out of StockCharts. So if you're new to the show, hopefully you've had some fun with me this week. We've got more coming every week. We're always diving into something, tips, tricks, tutorials, that kind of thing, as you've seen today. So hopefully you've enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you back for another one next week. We have another episode next Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, as always, up on the live channel, also up on our YouTube channel after that, and the on-demand platform at StockChartsTV.com. I am your host for the show. My name is Grayson Roze, a Vice President of Operations here at StockCharts.com. It's been great to be with you. I'll see you again soon for another episode, but until then, chart on, my friends.